Ah, ah, ah. Mm. Yeah, I remember when I was held political prisoner in Ukraine back in 1997. How, when they let us loose into the general population, oh, ah, happy Veterans Day. We walked around and we saw statues of Lenin. You know, I would like to think people who knew about Russia and the Ukraine would know about Lenin, but I guess you probably don't. You're thinking of John Lennon and you're glad he got shot in like 74 or 76, whenever it happened. You're mistaken the Lenin I'm talking about. There were there were giant statues of him around, and it was beautiful cultural art. And it's like, oh, oh, this is like Mozart shit. Except remember when Mozart was doing things in Beethoven, they're like, evil, evil, it's the devil's work, it's rock and roll, you know? And so, anyway, we're wandering around and looking at this stuff, and it didn't make you feel very good. You see, look at that. And they had people working with hammers and shit. And it's like, it's a nice piece of work. At least they left one or two artists around to do this stuff. Everybody else went back to a vocational school and got their plumbing and their electric and found out in the end, oh no, oh, it's supply and demand in the employment market. If there are too many electricians and plumbers, being that there's no minimum wage that reaches a livable wage, they're going to be making $7 an hour. Your kids aren't going to make it on your life work, your heritage, your legacy, your fucking money that you worked your whole life to make your kids feel good about you. No matter how much they hated you, they look and they say, wow, that's a good chunk of change, and they can forgive you for all your misgivings and ill doings. And since we're looking at that and accepting that there's going to be nothing but Kid Rock and all right, and she wangles, she tangles, a 1, 2, 3, 4. You get Ted Nugent too. And as long as you don't like alcohol and drugs, you'll be just fine with Ted Nugent as he goes crazy in his addiction and has sex with everybody you know. Hey, it'll be okay as long as you don't touch his girls. I've defended him in my past, even with my memory of seeing him in concert the one time, Ted Nugent in concert. I think it was at Wings Stadium in Kalamazoo. So if you want to look it up, you can find it. I saw him and I said, whoo! I'm still defending whatever the fuck I have still defended him since then. I will no longer. When he said, I've got more talent in my little finger than all those black lumps of shit on MTV. He said that in front of everybody. And I said, and I looked next to me on the other side of my brother, and there was a black dude, and he's just like, black dude went to see his show, and he gets this I guess this is what we all get. You just, I don't defend him anymore. But since that's all you're going to have, I'm going to put this out ahead of time. Because before long, we will only have Kid Rock and statues of us working. It's a rabbit. So I wrote this thing. I'm going to do one of these readings. I know I'm supposed to hold them off because I'm supposed to do a Patreon thing where anybody that wants to see the things I have to read, they can look them up and get on Patreon and buy me a beer because, well, you know, time's coming. We're not going to be able to afford it much longer. Not if you like Molson. But this is from the forthcoming novel, China Winter. And this, I wrote down, starts 13 March 2008, when we were all going broke. It's a Thursday. It's 10:06. I'm just going to read it. I'm just going to tell you one more climbing story. And this is what it amounts to. It was that big day on January 6th where people were climbing a building. This is what makes me look bad. I thought I was doing all right, and then other people start doing it and make me look bad. And my dad said, he said, "Did you see that? They look like a bunch of monkeys climbing the wall." And I thought, that was so close to being racist. A bunch of monkeys climb the walls, but no. They're like monkeys climbing the walls, and if they wanted to call other people monkeys, they're just like them. So what's the problem, I suppose? Is there more differences within than without groups of people, you know? Submarine. I'm just going to tell you one more climbing story before I get on with what I've been meaning to say. I hadn't been living in San Jose long at the time, long enough to know how to get to work and home from the bar. I was still staying on an old army buddy's couch when I got to the apartment this early Friday, even after being on the road for about 60 hours. I saw it sitting on the kitchen table right away. It dissipated the weariness inside of me, made me feel light, and I realized I was smiling. It'll all make sense in a minute. There was half a bottle of tequila practically gleaming in the dim light of the room. I won't say it was half full. I won't say it was half empty. It was just half a bottle, and that's enough for me. Joe and I killed it without hesitation. For Mexico. Next thing I remember, we were walking out of the apartment. It was pre-dusk, and saw children playing in the courtyard through my hazy vision. I felt like I was walking underwater, and remember thinking, it's a little bit early for me to be this fucked up. We went straight to a bar, but I don't remember going there. The next thing I remember, we'd gone into a fully awful, a falafel joint that was near a bar we attended weekly. It was about 2 as I came to. I was just finishing a beer and noticed I'd eaten a whole plate of that shit they pass off as delicious. Drunk people are strange. Joe was saying how he couldn't finish his beer, and I told him how I could. It was more than half a bottle. I grabbed it, slammed it, and we walked out. Construction site. Walking from that fully awful shithole to Joe's apartment, there was a large construction project with its tall blue walls waiting quietly in the darkness. Waiting for me, it seems, because I'd been waiting to go in there. Not only that, but as we approached, I saw the gates were unlocked and opened wide. I can't think that was for anybody but me. Without a word, I was doing a sustained sprint toward the site. The last thing I remember there was me passing through the gates and everything going blank. The next day, Joe told me he had no idea what I was up to, that he'd waited a while for me to come back out. Thanks, Joe. So he'd just gone home. Don't bother asking me what went on in there. The next thing I remember, I came to walking through backyards. I didn't know where the hell I was, but I looked up at the second-story window of a big house and thought, they shouldn't leave that open like that. Anybody could get in there. Not being the type of person that's out to hurt anybody and only wanting to help, I figured I should show those people how easy it would be for a dangerous criminal to invade their personal space. Next thing I remember, these are vague notions now. I was getting up, standing on a landing in a dark staircase. There were only a few steps up to the next floor. There on the threshold were the silhouettes of a guy and a chick, dimly backlit from the room up there. They were beckoning me with their hands, and the girl was saying, "Come on in, come on in." I thought, well, okay, if you say it's all right. And they were gone. I don't remember them leaving. Don't know if they were even really there. I came to running down a hallway, carrying something. When a door opened, there stood an ugly college girl. Looked like she'd just been sleeping. I stopped in front of her. She said, "What are you doing?" It turns out I was carrying a mirror, a full-length mirror I'd taken off the wall downstairs, according to the police report. I held out the mirror to her, grinning, and said, "Do you want to look at yourself in the mirror?" No. She really looked terrible. I thought I'd make it easy on her and said, "I guess you wouldn't, since it's 3 o'clock in the morning." She said, "Get out of here," and slammed the door. When I came to, there were a couple of San Jose City police guys coming out cautiously through the door of the kitchen downstairs. That's where I was. Just standing there doing nothing, sleeping probably. I don't remember thinking, damn. I do remember thinking that, but I got so fucked up, I didn't know it was time to leave. Out of the car, the guy that filled out the report read me my rights and reminded me that I had the right to remain silent, of which my smiling response was, I would love to speak with you. It's in the police report. Always be respectful. Feign respect when you're caught red-handed and are in custody. It'll go much easier for you. I could have very easily been facing a felony with B&E charges, but in court, the judge was surprised to see that I'd only been cited with a misdemeanor, illegally entering a non-commercial dwelling. Said he'd never even heard of that, and I got off light. My probation officer seemed sincerely shocked and confused when he saw just how light the very first thing he'd said after meeting me and looking at my file was, "That's all you got?" A bit bewildered. The police report corroborates the bulk of my vague notions and adds more, such as the blood-streaked shirt found on the ground beneath the window and how the blood streaks on it coincide with the scrapes on my back, presumably from where I squeezed through the window. See that? Even a crack can be an invitation to an unwanted guest. I must have found my shirt to be constrictive. It happens. Inconveniently for me, I went to records trying to a copy of my police report, but they wouldn't allow it until after my court date. It seems they don't want us to be prepared. All I could do was dress well and act smart, going in blind with no concrete evidence, only vague notions I believed to be sure of. None of them were very flattering anyway. Best to omit, yet lacking certainty. I went in with a limp statement, calculated to portray myself as a decent person, a veteran of the armed forces. What a joke. When asked what was going through my mind, I told the judge, "Well, Your Honor, in the Army, they taught me to run, jump, and climb. Every once in a while, when I get really drunk, I still have this resurgent tendency to do just that." He started flipping through the 4 or 5 or 7 pages of my police report, asking me things I didn't know. Me kind of shaking my head, looking confused, until I finally said, "Sir, I really don't remember any of that at all." He closed the report, looked at me, and hinted, "You were crazy, right?" I said, "Well, cutting me off and cajoling me, he repeated, "You were crazy, right?" With a look into my eyes, expression, attitude. I caught on, said, "Yes, sir." And he brought the hammer down very lightly. It didn't even hurt. Not anything like the hammer those cops brought down in the Jose City, Maine jail the night of my arrest. it's difficult to tell sometimes when it's okay to smile for your mugshot. I mean, I can understand it. If a guy happens to be a downright vicious criminal, his mugshot's probably going to come out looking pretty angry. The same way a sadistic prick is likely to have one with a twisted sneer and a twinkle in his eye. And I think that's okay, really, the way it should be. I think mine should be smiling with laughing eyes, uh, by authorities' logic anyway, simply because it'd make it much easier for the rat fink bitch trying to finger me to find me in the book, flipping through the book. Oh my God! Whimpering and seeping. That's the face that still plagues my darkest hours. And there I am, just like I was, bare-toothed and saying, it'd make detective work a lot easier. But instead, it seems they want us to look angry and violent and dangerous or pathetic and whimpering. It must give them some twisted little sense of power to think that jail is the worst thing that ever happened to us sadistic pricks. But it's not. You can meet a lot of interesting people in jail, some even worthy of friendship on the outside, because quite logically, jail is where they put people they don't like. So if you don't like them, then they're probably introducing you to people like yourself. Make friends, start a business. Next thing you know, life is good and you're screwing somebody's sister, or maybe even a cop's ex-wife. There are plenty of those out there. So whereas everything was going quite well with my arrest, it went downhill fast when it came time for the woman to take my picture. She's telling me to quit smiling, and I'm standing there ear to ear, telling her a shorter version of what I just told you. Next thing, I see 4 cops marching like stormtroopers. I don't remember them goose stepping, but I think they were sporting the jackboots, bearing down on me across the room. Fighting them would have done me no good in any way, and really, what would you expect? Would you think I was gonna clear a path out of the jailhouse like Rambo or something, running off to the wood line at the banks of the Guadalupe River, setting traps all the way? Hell, the bums would keep tripping them, and they're not such good eating. Nope. I was thinking clearly by then. I faced toward them as they came, arms hanging at my sides, palms open to them so they could see I meant no fight. Look, you want to see somebody with palms open? Remember the last time Hitler started a war and he shot himself in the fucking head? That's all we have to hope for. Don't show your palms. Don't show your palms. It makes you look weak. It seems to me they weren't reading my message, and why would they even try? Who says they'd even be capable? Temporary insanity is said to blind people to reason, right? And what could be more maddening than the invigorating mentality of the pack? 4 on 1, baby. The blood gets up. What could be more fun, right? Yeah, right. That's a real nice display of psychological discipline on your part, boys. I never flinched, only waited. When they got to me and threw me to the floor, I just fell limp and remained that way while one of the peace officers cranked my arms up behind my back by the wrists. 2 are around kicking me, and the other had me by the hair, pounding my head off the floor. When I'd figured they had time to get it out of their systems, yet showed no signs of letting up. I said, calmly as I could, through gritted teeth, in the middle of a severe beating, you don't have to do this. I'm not struggling. That seemed to break their spell. They paused, picked me up, and helped me get my picture taken before throwing me in a cell by myself. Can you believe they let people like that walk around in public? This isn't blasphemy, is it? I mean, after all, if the government is God, then cops are its hands, right? And talking about its hands being dirty would amount to sacrilege, wouldn't it? And we're really not supposed to speak freely, to say what we think, are we? Hellfire, I'm fucked. Me? What about you? You shouldn't even be reading this. And if you catch your neighbor reading it, you better not risk being labeled as a sympathizer. What a dirty word that. You'd better report your neighbor to a trusted government official, if you can find one. Someone you'd trust with your money and your children. Maybe your clergyman. He'll know what to do. First, he'll pray for your soul. When that doesn't work, he'll impress upon you the social mores that represent unwritten laws. And when that doesn't work, he'll gather his flock and herd to picket and bitch to the figureheads which portray the visible government that your local clergyman doesn't pay taxes to, but is obviously in some form of collusion with. Otherwise, fire trucks loaded with taxpayer money shouldn't go to churches, and private citizens shouldn't be sent to taxpayer prisons for burning them. And they'll go ahead and write a law. There, that's a load off my shoulders. Now, knowing that the decisions concerning right and wrong are comfortably out of my hands and gripped tightly in those of the government, a while later, they came and got me, put me in the drunk tank with the others. Right away, some guy said to me, "Dude, what'd you do?" A bit surprised at the question. I said, "I didn't know. What'd you see me do?" "I saw the whole thing and I didn't see nothing," he said. "Nothing to deserve a beating like that." I mentioned that maybe they didn't like us smiling for our pictures, then sat down and went to sleep. I've always been good at sleeping in jail. Later that day, when I was signing out, there was a copy of my mugshot in the file next to where I had to sign. My head was tilted back and cocked to the side a bit. My eyes burned, bleeding rage directly into the camera's eye. My lips drawn together tighter than, well, a lot of things, I guess, so that my mouth looked almost non-existent. The skin was drawn so tightly over the bone and muscle of my face that my face looked like it could just about split right open and take someone's head clean off in one gnashing, tearing, lacerating bite, and it just might. Let's not forget about avulsion, and it just might, if you looked at the picture too long. The arm of a peace officer could be seen going up behind my head where he had me by the hair. if they wanted a picture of rage, that picture skip mugshot albums and straight into textbooks somewhere. I don't know what would have happened if I'd unleashed the sort of rage I saw in that picture. I'd probably be dead. It was a good picture. I would like a copy of it. I would look It would look good blown up and hanging over the hearth of a fireplace in an ancestral home. My descendants could be there for a family reunion or something, saying something like, "Oh, that's such a good picture of Grandpa Archie. Remember that time?" Not in front of the children, someone else would say. "Ah, not until they're 23. You really should see the picture." Rodney King. Although I may be something of a dirty son of a bitch, and something in my head felt like I was going to rot for days longer than the common hangover could be held accountable for, and I couldn't feel my fingers for weeks afterwards. That, and I had witness instead of suing and starting a riot. I chose to learn my lesson, and I have implanted a mental mechanism in my head that when I'm drunk says, "Do not climb into windows." I got a copy of my police report after the trial just to get an idea of whether any of the stuff I said or did was outside of my line of reasoning. People should know what sort of riotous shit they're capable of before getting loaded like I do. And it all seemed to fit my character and belief system. That's a relief. I'd hate to have to quit drinking. Under the modus operandum heading, it said simply climbs in second story windows. Ha! I haven't climbed in windows since, not those of strangers anyway. So now I've changed my MO. They won't know what to be looking for. Could be anything. Puts penis in police officer or something like that. What? You think I'm implying rape? No, it's just that I'm sure cops wouldn't want me screwing around like we were having a good time. Screwing around with one of their kind, and that could serve as an MO of how I go about getting beaten up by peace officers. Don't get me wrong, I've been with a couple of cops, but that was in other countries. There was that Nazi looking pullet-eyed chick in an alley up against the wall in Cologne, and the brunette Bobby on the grass in England almost had a Chinese Jing Cha chick on a later trip to Yangshuo, but that didn't pan out, so it's not worth talking about. And those are all different stories. Anyway, I like climbing. You see, there it is. I just figured I'd put it out there. You know, you'd think you'd never be interested in reading that story at all, outside of the fact that they're just going to have stupid sculptures of Sylvester Stallone sodomizing the president, whoever it might happen to be. That's the only stuff we're going to have as far as art goes. So I figured I'd share some art. And since I shared some art, I should also say, well, those days when things are legal and illegal, I'm just going to say, pardon me. What do I mean by pardon me? It used to mean, excuse me, I didn't do so much. Sorry about that. it became that. But we've gone back into making American great again, where they say, pardon me, and they mean it. You got someone like, I'm not even going to bring up Benedict Arnold because he doesn't fit in with this crowd. I'm just going to say, pardon me. Let me go. Let me be. I didn't do so much that's so wrong. Look, maybe you think I'm not enough because I didn't fight to the death with 4 cops. You had it easy. You had hundreds of people against everyone. Hundreds. Several hundreds of people against everyone. And you got pardoned. Why is it that I'm a problem now? Oh, because I complied? Because I have artwork to share? I suppose if you put me in jail long enough, you'd understand it was a mistake, because that's me walking out loose. Imagine if you gave me time to write.